Yeah, so I finally made this happen. We are doing our first VR roundtable interview chat. I don't know what to call it yet, but yeah, so I'm Geoff DuQuette, and I'm going to do a series with my VFX friends asking about what they do and why they do it. So let's just get started.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have Jayme Vandusen, compositor. And we have Dziewanna Picazo, coordinator. What are you doing these days?
Yeah, still coordinating.
Okay. And the first thing that I love to ask everybody that I've ever worked with and talked to about it, how do you explain what you do to friends, family, grandma that have no idea what visual effects are?
Great question. It completely depends on who you're talking to. Like if you're talking to someone who is not fluent with computers at all, I just say I'm in computer animation. And they go, oh, okay, cool. And they don't really understand.
Okay.
But they understand that it's with computers. But for anyone in the know, I usually say, hi, I'm a visual effects compositor. And people are like, what's that? And it's basically what I can kind of, whittle it down to is that like we are the people who take all the different elements that are rendered or created for a shot, including the plate, the live action elements. We bring them all together, kind of like a visual effects sandwich artist, in the sense that like I don't make the bread, I don't chop the veggies. People give these elements to me and I assemble the perfect sandwich out of that. So yeah, that's kind of like what you do. You just smash it all together and you make it, I made a pretty picture.
Okay.
It's actually really funny because I use the cake analogy where
Well, there you
we're
go.
baking a cake. And each department, like there's the department that raises the chickens and gets the eggs, and there's the
What
department
chickens go into a cake? What kind of cake are you making? The egg. Okay, I was like, what?
There's so
What kind of cake is this?
Bro, you're not putting chickens in your cake? You're doing it wrong.
That's why
I need you to make me a cake. I gotta try this thing.
But yeah, and then you guys, the compositors, are the ones that like actually put all the ingredients together and put it in the oven.
Yeah.
But you have to get those ingredients first, and you get those ingredients from animation, from layout, from lighting, from assets, and those are your flour, your sugar, your salt. What? Lots of salt and lighting.
Salt in a lot of departments. Dynamics gets a
Some of
little
them.
salty.
But yeah, that's like the biggest, like worst kept secret of the industry is that no one person makes visual effects.
No.
It's such a team effort. It takes hundreds of people doing all different kinds of jobs along the way to produce something that can go by in an eye blink in a show. And stuff, we agonize over moment to moment by, we'll watch things, over and over on loop, upside down, backwards, forwards, exposing up, and it's just, we see it at the minutia level in order for it to look right.
Yeah.
Because when it doesn't look right, it's always very obvious, but to the layman, they can't identify what makes a visual effects shot bad. They can just know that, no, I'm not buying it. And so like our job is to make sure that goes through into a process where it happens, you believe it, and then only after the fact you go, oh, how did they do those shots in Gravity where they were flying, over the planet? And you're like, oh yeah, they didn't shoot it in space. That was actually done on a green screen stage.
That's my favorite thing is when somebody has to ask, oh, how did they do that? Like, what do you mean, how did they do that? When it doesn't even register that it's a visual effects shot, that's sort of
Totally
ideal.
Yeah.
You've
got them. They bought into your fantasy, right? And
Right.
that's the beauty of it, is that the best visual effects, well, some of the best visual effects are invisible, right?
Well, and there's a thing that people don't really realize. A lot of the things that you see that are visual effects, you wouldn't even expect. Like this entire the scene right here,
Yeah.
this could all be visual effects, but you would never know it. It's not an explosion. It's not a huge, awesome fight scene. It would just be background or crowd, people in the crowd or anything. And
If
you
the
don't
sky
even
isn't
realize.
as dramatic
Yeah.
as you want it to be, if we're shooting this daytime and we want it to be sunset, we would just cut out the mountains, cut out the trees, and put in a new sky dome. It's and if it's done well, hopefully the audience will never know, which is, like I said, that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
I'm actually Scottish, and they've turned me into this half Chinese guy just for the purposes of this interview, and that's visual effects.
Well, we're talking about diversity, right? Like I'm a shark man.
That's right.
And
You are a
now,
shark man.
a woman because of visual effects.
Yeah.
It's the magic of film.
There just weren't enough females available. We had to turn this shark person.
There are no females in the world. All shark men.
Well, that's actually something I did want to bring up is the world of visual effects is male dominant, should we say? I think most people can attest to that. It's something that I've been in it long enough, I don't really notice it. And I've actually noticed a change towards a little bit more equality since 10 years ago when I started. But is that something that you can talk about? Is it something, have you had good experiences, bad experiences? Is it something you notice?
I'm in the generation of change. So my generation and everybody coming into the industry under me, it's so diverse. You don't know, it's awesome. There's women, men, everything in between. And there's all cultures, which is so cool. The women before me fought for that, and they fought a very, very hard fight, and it's paying off now. But it's going to be a long time. And I was having this conversation last night with some other guys about how you can't just make an industry like this diverse like that. You can't put a woman who's been in the industry for 5 years in a supervision role that takes 10 years to get to just because she's a woman.
Right.
It's going to take time for that diversity to grow up and it be across the board. So yeah, I do work with a lot of male leads. Most of the shows I work on are all male leads. But that's okay because they've been there for 20 years. They've earned that place. And soon, the girls that are in my generation and under me will all earn that place too.
Yeah, I've worked with female leads and female artists. There's like case in point.
Yeah.
In the audience, we have some female artists, but the thing is, like, I find that, especially with what we do with compositing, a lot of it is color and light, and females are really good with color in general, more so than guys, and so you often will see that being an advantage.
Sounds sexist.
Oh yeah,
So sexist.
like you look
Girls
at
are
this
into
table.
fashion and clothes. This shot is pink. I need a woman to
No,
do
I'm
it.
just saying, like, if you saw this table, the dudes would say, "What color is this table?" We would say white, and then a woman might say, "Oh, that's eggshell," or "No, that's and those are different like words for the same thing, but they have they grow up with like color and as part of their like daily regimen. You know what I mean? Like with makeup and with other stuff, but like. I find it interesting that they have a different perspective on color, and in fact, it's proven that women have a higher gamut for seeing color than men.
What, really?
Yeah, it's true.
No way.
It's generally true that women have a higher acuity or wider range of viewing color than men.
I wonder why, like, for survival purposes, why we evolved like that. That's cool. That's not what we're talking about.
No, that's actually really cool.
It's true.
That's on topic. That's not something I've ever heard of, and it actually sounds like a made-up makeup statistic for being super sexist a minute ago. But if that is true, that's
Nice-
kind of
nice
impressive.
recovery.
That's amazing.
Right? That's what I'm all about. Facts.
Yeah.
There's no fact checking here, right?
Nobody looked.
Oh,
do not
I think that falls on me. So I can say no fact checking.
There's going to be a banner that's going to go around the bottom of the screen.
Awesome.
So, how did you get into it? How did you get into visual effects?
I actually have kind of a fun story about that. I was in school forever. I did architecture in college. I did mechanical engineering. I'm actually 18 units away from a mechanical engineering degree, but I hated it. So I left school and tended bar for a couple years. And my bar back came to me one day and was like, "Look at this thing I made in class." And it was a god-awful, because he was a student, not because he was bad at what he was doing, but it was this animation of some horror film that he had seen. There's like chains hanging from the wall and animating and moving. And I was like, "Well, what do you do? What class is this?" And he was like, "Well, it's computer animation." I was like, that's a class? Wait, that's a job? And all of a sudden the light went off from every Pixar movie I've seen since middle school, Jurassic Park, Star Wars, all the things that have sort of like those have been the lead ups to most of the people that I've talked to. But for me, it was that one instance of realization that, oh my God, there's people that do this for a living. And having a science background that wasn't really hitting the art background for me, and wanting to do art but having so much science and technology background, it was kind of a perfect blend of artistry and technology. And when I went to college for visual effects, I went from kind of a B- average student to head of my class.
Yeah.
So it was
It's
just
so
one of those
awesome
things.
when
Yeah.
you have the click moment where
Oh,
you're
it
like,
was
oh shit, this is something you can do for a living.
Yeah.
This is something I can make money off of. That's so cool.
I find it so interesting that like you had seen Jurassic Park, you'd seen Star Wars, but it wasn't until you saw this guy's demo reel that you thought, this is the highest form of art I've ever seen. I want to do this.
A demo reel is giving it way too much credit. This was an assignment that he had done in one day,
I want to go to that.
and he showed me this thing, and I was like, "That's it."
Yeah.
And yeah, so Toy Story was one of my favorite movies back then, and I just constantly I was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer on
Yeah, yeah.
repeat, which had great effects for the day, but looking back on it now, just very rudimentary, cool
Yeah.
things that it was doing.
Yeah.
And it's just I remember like one of those like end of your life moments where everything flashes before your eyes. It's like every movie I had ever seen was just like on a Rolodex going past me, and I was like, everything's visual effects.
Yeah.
And since that day, it's gone tenfold what it used to
Well,
be.
that's just it. Like visual effects are so ubiquitous now that they're in television commercials and like, car commercials. There's no one uses real cars in a car commercial anymore. They're always a digital car replacement that they can film from any angle.
Try telling that to one of your friends or family. Tell that to your grandma who's just like, "What do you do?" "Oh, I make cars." "Oh, you're a car manufacturer." "Nope,
Yeah.
no, not that. I put cars in commercials." "Oh, you drive." "Nope."
No, but
You know what-
forget.
Oh,
Like,
it's-
we forget because we're so immersed in the industry.
Yeah.
We completely forget that someone doesn't know what, if you say compositor, what a compositor is, or doesn't even understand computers enough to, like you said, you didn't know you could do that until you knew you could do that.
Right.
And then everything.
I didn't know that cars were completely CG until I did a car commercial. I did a Mazda commercial 8 years ago, and I was like, "All right, so where's the plates?" And they're like, "Oh, it's all CG." Wait, what? So if I'm
This is
in the
false
industry,
advertising.
yeah. But it was cool because it's easier to do a cool place that they're shooting in. Like it was a Tron style racetrack with lights on the ground and everything else, and skidding out and tail whipping and everything. And it's much easier to animate that in CG than it is to get a professional driver and build a track and put lights in afterwards. So
But here's the other thing is that because visual effects are so prolific now, it is cheaper to do it with visual effects than it is to do it with practical elements in a lot of cases. That's where the term, well, we'll fix it in post comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like often you'll see things done on set when they shoot a film that they know that they're shooting something wrong or incorrectly, and they're like, we don't have the time to change this, and this is kind of what we got, so we're just going to roll with this and we're going to fix it in visual effects. Because the budgets there are so much more, what do you call it? It's just cheaper to fix things there because like when you're rolling on film, it's thousands of dollars per minute, right? For the crew, for all of that stuff.
Breaking it down, rental equipment, crew,
Yeah.
when everything is nickeled and dimed by the minute,
Yes.
you're spending anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 an hour on set, depending on the scope.
Yeah, and the irony is that visual effects are not cheap. It still costs a lot of money to do produce the work that we create because a lot of it is just artistry and a lot of technology combined together. But it still comes down to the fact that it's the lesser of two evils.
Right.
It does lead to a problem where, like, Thor Ragnarok, I think, had this scene where she pulls the hammer towards her, and they could have easily shot that practically, not the hammer, obviously, but they shot it all on green screen where they could have gone on location, and just to replace that area was a lot of time and a lot of money spent that they didn't really need to spend, but they did because they shot it on green screen because they didn't have a location in mind yet. And the location that they put back there wasn't a CG location.
Right.
So it runs into that problem where then it did become more expensive in the end.
A lot of it is planning and whatnot, but that touches on a subject that I really want to discuss is what are some common misconceptions about visual effects. And one of the things is green screens. People don't understand that making something green, i.e. like having someone on set and they're like, oh, I'm holding this thing, but we're going to paint it green, so we're going to make it go away. Yeah, I mean, sure, that is actually a technique for chroma keying something and making it go away. But what they don't understand is if I'm holding an apple and it was fully green, you could make it go away. But then what you're left is a plate where I have a big giant hole where the apple would be in my hand.
We've actually run into this problem before where you're shooting in a car
Yeah.
and they wanted to move the camera from if the car's here, they wanted to move the camera from here to here, but they wanted to keep the people that's in the car in the shot, but they didn't, it was really, really hard to explain to them that if you change the perspective of everything else, but the perspective of the people is still at this angle, but everything else is at this angle, it's just gonna be wrong. They just didn't get that. That's
Right.
really hard to explain.
Well, it's tough. I mean, a lot of directors grow up with like a more classical trained background where they're dealing with like practical stuff.
Right.
And this, emergent visual effects just kind of being thrown in there. Oh, they just shoot it on green screen, and then there's not enough training or education that goes into like, well, what does that mean? Okay, hold on. Like, we're going to throw a green screen back there, but what is it? Like, what are the ideal conditions for this, and how can it fail? And that
I
kind
was
of stuff.
doing a project early in my career, and so having a director come in, he was shooting an independent film that he was financing himself, lots of visual effects, but he didn't have money to do the high-end visual effects, so he was trying to cut corners wherever he could. He had, the story's a little out there, but he had a bear coming down a ramp of a spaceship in the middle of a field.
Oh,
And
Go
so-
on.
that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that movie. but in order to do that, he had a trainer with a lead, and then the thing that goes around the bear's neck, and so he
practical
can
bear.
a practical bear,
Awesome.
real bear,
Okay.
with a real trainer, and so camera's here, bear's here. Instead of putting the trainer on this side where we just had to paint out a little
Sure.
bit, bring the fur back, he put him on this side,
Closest to camera.
closest to camera, between the camera and the bear, but wrapped him in a full green screen suit.
Of course. 'cause
Green
now he's
screen pole,
invisible.
green screen suit.
Makes people invisible.
Yeah.
And he came around my desk and was like, "Why are you spending so much time on this shot? This should be easy." And I was like, "Well, I have to paint out the guy and repaint the bear, and this is really hard." And he was like, "He's green. Just key him out."
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's a hole through the bear. No. He's in green. He disappears.
Yeah.
Like,
They don't understand that, like, just because he's in, you're able to remove him.
Oh, they
you
don't-
can't recreate the information that is behind him.
the
in
best
space.
part of that was I was so new. I was about a year and a half in, and he was telling me how to do this. And in my mind, I'm going, "Am I doing this wrong? What?"
Yeah.
I swear I know what's going on. There's no information for the bear. Like, the bear's not there.
Does this guy know
But is
something
there
that
a
I don't
button
know?
that I don't know? hit the fix bear button? Like, what is?
Yeah.
And he just eventually the owner of the studio saw what was happening and came by and sort of like dangled a carrot in front of him, and he walked away and was like, "Don't worry, you're doing fine." And I was like, "Oh, thank God!" Like, I was out of my mind trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. And yeah, so it's funny that even people in the industry that need to know these things, some of them are coddled to the point that they don't know the details of what they're asking for.
Sure.
It's-
Yeah.
So I'm a lot younger in the industry than you guys are. When you're in the industry, have you seen a change? Old man.
Just-
Have you seen a change in how people are treated in the industry, actually? Because I hear a lot of horror stories about, back in the day and back in studios and people throwing chairs and stuff. I've never experienced stuff like that, but
I think the level of professionalism has
Yeah.
definitely changed. Where the stories I hear from just before I started, where people were sleeping in beds made under their desk, and
we still do that.
and doing, doing lines of coke off of their desks while, "Oh, okay, that made me creative," and just working for 3 days straight and then dying under their desk for the next 2.
I think that's a supply and demand issue. I think back then there wasn't as many people to draw upon from a pool of artists, as far as like if you needed help, well, there wasn't reinforcements. Like, there was no cavalry coming to save your ass. It was literally brute force. It was the only solution to every solution, right? And now, we work in a city of Vancouver where there are thousands of people in our industry, and the artist pool will float around from company to company where the work goes. So I think the availability and there's more talent here, and there's more students being trained in the city than ever before. But there are still a finite number of jobs. So that is now becoming the issue. It's not the manpower; it's how many jobs can sustain.
Well, I've been
those
in a
people.
few places. I've had to chase visual effects work around a few places. I started in San Francisco Bay Area, right when I was graduating. Sort of that, it didn't completely dry up, but the jobs were so hard to find that you had to have 10 years experience to get sort of a middling job. So
Yeah.
I moved to LA, just in time for all the work in LA to move to Vancouver. And since I've been here, it feels like it's gone to Montreal. They're opening in Australia. They're opening a lot of different places. So
Money talks.
yeah.
Like saving 20% of $10 is not a big deal. Saving 20% of $100 million, now you're talking.
Right.
So, what are you going to do?
That's awesome, and it also depends on what position you're in. Because if you're a CG generalist, you're gonna have a lot more opportunity, obviously, than just somebody who's just a lighter. And like I was an artist before, and then I got into production. Production's hurting right now. There is not enough production people. I get emails all the time being like, "Come join our studio."
Yeah.
I already have a studio, thank you. But it's how flexible you are in the industry. Are you willing to get, if you're starting and can't get a job in as an animator, are you willing to get coffee for everybody for a year, and then once the animator job opens up, hop into that job?
Well, not just that, but a lot of people waste that opportunity. They don't stick around later. Like, nobody wants to be a runner, as far as I can tell. Most people that are runners want to be a CG artist or a compositor or want their first
It's a
shot
stepping
in a
stone.
studio.
Yeah.
But I've had a couple students that I taught that they got their first big break, and then what they did was they did dishes and they went home as soon as they were done. You're like, that's not what you're trying to do here. Of course you're doing the dishes, but
Yeah.
that's to allow you into the studio so you can talk to other artists and work on the machines when everybody's gone home. If you're doing a runner job, you should be there anytime they'll let you be in the building.
The best part about my first studio was they just allowed me free reign of the entire motion capture stage. So, under supervision, of course.
I was going to say, my mind was spinning.
But I taught myself the software because I had access to the software. You don't get access to a lot of the software that you use in the industry just at your home.
Yeah.
And
Right.
just having access to that software and people around that know how to use it,
Totally.
man, that's awesome.
But even like the explosion of internet resources in our time, like when we were in school, like it was very hard to look up tutorials for what we did. Like you had to
They
go
didn't
to a
exist. YouTube
school.
didn't exist.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. You had to
true,
go to a
yeah.
physical place of learning with learned scholars and wizened people and say, "Teach me your secrets, master." But now, you can go on YouTube and whatever, and you can type up, nuke tutorials, and then you'll probably be flagged by the FBI. But sorry, nuke is the software that we use in
Wow.
compositing.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh shoot! You see, you
Yeah.
forget about things like that. You're
There
so
you go.
cute.
So
Yeah.
I'm well known by the FBI. They're probably watching right now. So yeah, it has changed the industry a lot. I think having access to that, knowledge sharing has definitely changed the landscape.
But having access to those softwares, once you're a PA, and being able to be like, I'm gonna stay after hours. Do you mind if I jump on a computer and use a license if nobody's using it?
Yeah.
Like that's practice that you.
One of my
That's
first
brilliant.
jobs in LA allowed me to stay unsupervised after hours, bring in my own drives with projects that I was doing with friends and everybody else,
Wow,
plug
really?
into the computer, use Nuke until whatever time, and as long as I was there from the hours that I was being hired doing the rotoscoping or whatever entry-level position I was doing, they let me go nuts.
That's
it was great.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's super awesome
Yeah.
that that some studios. What was it, a smaller studio?
It was a smaller studio at the time. They've gotten much bigger since then.
Oh, and probably because they were.
Because
so
they're
awesome
super
about-
cool and they're
yeah.
easy to work with, and they do good work and they know what they're doing. It's kind of like everything hit all at once.
Yeah.
And they had all of that together. So
And when you like something, you're gonna stay and work on it. Like
Yeah.
working after hours on it's not working. It's probably why we all overwork ourselves so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not for the
Sleep in
faint
the
of heart.
studio.
I feel like visual effects is definitely a field of work where if you don't love it, you're not going to last.
Correct.
I feel like people can exist in visual effects and pay the bills, but it's not really a career in that sense. You know what I mean? The people who make it a career are people who really love and are passionate about making movies and TV shows and video games, because like the hundreds of or thousands of man hours that go into making things is only done because people care. You know what I mean? When we care so much about this stuff, like I'm the biggest nerd about this kind of stuff. Like I'll talk people's ears off about it forever, but
we've noticed.
That's why you're here.
But you said something last
Yeah.
week that was really poignant to me, which is, and you actually said the same thing. It's almost an environment of friends helping friends, so that when one show goes into crazy overtime, I think everybody here has done the same thing.
Yeah.
Is, oh, I was going to go home at a normal time, but you look like you're absolutely crazy with 10 shots due tonight. Do you need help? And all of a sudden, my 6 o'clock leaving and going home, having dinner, seeing my wife turns into, well, sorry, I'm going to be here till midnight at least, helping these other guys get this show out.
It's a brotherhood. Like, we suffer together and then come out the other side.
But I think that's almost necessary for success.
Yeah,
the
in
people
this
that I've seen
industry,
that go home at 5 going, nope, can't stay, I'm done for the day. Like, on occasion, that's fine. We all have lives. But if you're not willing to put yourself out there for everybody else you're working with, it really does feel like those people don't have the same level of success.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
look-
you can take that time. Like one of the guys we worked with, I don't want to say his name, but he'd go home to bathe his children and put them to bed, which was dope. And then he'd come back. Nobody knocked him for it because he's living his life. That's amazing that he took the time out to do that.
Yeah.
He still got his work done, and he was still such a team player that, like, you can still do those things and still be part of that whole camaraderie of staying till 2 a.m.
Well, totally. And when you're part of a team and the whole team is pushed to the limit of getting something done, and that one person is not putting in that extra effort to make sure that everybody else's workload. Like when I leave, it's not like my shots are going to be completed by somebody magically. Like that's actually someone's job now. Like I'm taking my work and pushing it onto my coworkers.
Yep.
And so if you're that guy who continually does that, I mean, you're not going to last as part of being that team for very long. When it's time to start cutting people, who's the first person they're going to cut? Is the guy who always, never wants to contribute and help the team pull through. Because again, it's a team effort. No one gets there by themselves.
Which kind of sucks because that takes advantage of a lot of the younger people in the industry that have so much gusto and want to stay and want to put in the work, and companies do take advantage of that. And like the whole the lawsuit with the animators on Sausage Party.
Yeah.
Where they were kind of doing that. Billy's staying, so you have to say Billy must be more passionate than you are, and that gets really sad.
Yeah, it can be weaponized.
Yeah,
it can be
yeah,
weaponized,
really.
and it's not cool, obviously, to shame people into staying.
Especially
because
if you're not paying them overtime.
well, especially if you're not paying them overtime, that is just basically slave labor.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I think there's both. Like, there's a passion for the art and there's a dedication, but there are limits to both, what you should be able to endure, but also what you should be willing to give up. Because beyond your 40 hours, that's your personal time. You know what I mean? Like, everything else is a gift to the company.
40
You don't
hours.
owe them anything. You don't owe them anything beyond that. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause that's what you're contractually obligated to do. But the people who do stay, and like, we have a saying at work where we call it the Century Club, where when someone bills 100 work hours in a single work week, most people work.
Two-timer right over here.
Yeah.
Mr. Haitian, two times in a row, I believe.
That's-
200-hour
I was going
paycheck,
to say,
is that
that's
right?
what we call the double Century Club, where you build 100 hours in a week, followed by another 100 hours in a week. And it's gross when you actually calculate how many physical hours there are in a week versus how many you worked. It's kind of gross. So, I mean,
No,
mad
what's gross
props.
is the fact that you've been non-showered, wearing the same clothes every day, sleeping at the studio. That's
True.
gross.
So with all this said, your question earlier was what keeps you in the industry.
Yeah,
So
why do you guys stay? I see so many jaded people right now above. I'm not at that point. I'm still at that point where I walk in and I'm stars in my eyes from when I get there in the morning to when I leave the next morning. And I love every minute of it, but I do see a lot of burnout. I do see a lot of people that are getting rather jaded, and they're like, oh, you're still smiling, eh? Wait a few years. And so why are you still smiling?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, like, I guess it comes down to like having a passion for the art and for the craft, but also, like, I have really good friends who have very serious jobs. Like my best friend's an ER doctor, and he works in an ER where it's literally life and death on the line. And then my other good friend is a police officer, and every day he goes out and puts his uniform on. It can end in tragedy, but like for me, like a bad day in visual effects is still a pretty awesome day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Coming
get
in,
to,
having your snack, and
yeah,
turning on
snacks
Netflix
aside,
on the
Jeff.
side.
Which number of snacks would this be?
Yeah.
This is second breakfast. But yeah, no, I mean, being able to make movies and love doing it at the same time, and being able to be rewarded, financially for doing that. And sometimes I joke that I'm like, I can't believe someone's paying me to do this job, But it's true. I mean, I do feel like even if I won the lottery and had $20 million and people are like, what are you going to do now? Quit your job? And I'd be like, well, no. Now I can do stuff without the pressure of having to pay my mortgage.
Right.
So like, I feel like I would still do what I do. Maybe not. I probably wouldn't work at overtime. But
You say that, but
yeah.
We know what type of person you are. You would still work overtime
still be
occasionally.
there.
It wouldn't be an
If
everyday
Jeff
thing.
was
but
dying, he's like, I'm not going to be able to go home tonight. I'd be like, oh, that sucks, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, see you later, buddy.
I won the lottery. But like really, he'd be in the back being like, I'm just gonna quickly do this for him. Yeah. Why do you say?
A lot of the same reasons, but it's kind of ridiculous how much we get paid for finger painting on computers. I mean, it's entertainment, and of course, the money that drives entertainment is what's paying us,
Yeah.
essentially. And there's a lot of value in what we do, but I don't know what other job I could do where I could go sit in front of a computer, hang out with people I enjoy, talk about playing Magic the Gathering and movies that I saw and everything else, and still enjoy what I'm doing and make the living that I'm making. I mean, it's also leading to what I would like to do, which is sort of VR production, and I can use all those same skill sets with a little bit more creative control, which is one of the negatives that I have. But like you said, not having control over what color this little thing is in the shot, when you put it up against ER doctors or nurses or people saving lives or whatever else, it's really not that big a deal. I don't have anything I can complain about.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, that's basically it. Is I love what I do, and it's fun, and it pays well.
I mean, I'm still having fun. We're in the theater. It's 4 a.m. and we're all so tired and still smiling and still making jokes about a shot. And like, you're hanging out with your friends for the most part. Like the last project I was on, it was the best project I've ever worked on, and I'm still friends with those guys.
Hey now, we've all worked on projects together.
I mean,
Hey now.
I mean,
It's too late.
One of the other projects that you worked on with
Yeah.
me was the best project.
No, but that's
I love
fair.
those guys. But yeah, I'm still friends with you guys, and that's the thing is all the projects I've worked on, I've made such close friends with the people that I worked with, like-minded people in this industry.
Right.
And once you're in the trenches with them for that long of time, the bond becomes stronger, and you get to see the type of person they are under stress, which means you get to know them a little better than someone else on the street, and it's really, really cool. We all still hang out. I saw Mike today, and I gave him the hugest hug I give anybody because I hadn't
Good
seen
Who's
him
on
for a
camera
while.
to be
Good
fair.
hugger. Good hugger.
Oh, camera's on? Oh, I really like this guy.
I like the people that I meet here.
And so thinking one more thing of reasons to stay in the industry, what has been your favorite project that you've ever done? Like what can you say stands out to you as really good experiences?
I would say for me, like, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan.
Mhm.
I got the opportunity to work on Game of Thrones, and it was a great time to be like involved in the process. I was seeing stuff behind the scenes that like I really wanted to talk to people about all these spoilers that I was seeing, all these people who were going to die and whatnot. But it was frustrating because you couldn't talk about it. But no, at the same time, it was a very difficult project. So it was highs and lows.
Game of Thrones is very, very difficult, but there's a lot of expectation there.
Yeah.
And then I have two. My one that I'm proud of and the one that I liked to work on.
Ooh, good question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because like what you're most proud of might not have been the funnest project that you
Sure.
worked on. So my proudest one is Rogue One. We worked on Tarkin's face, and I'm stupid proud of the work we did on
Yeah.
that face. And then my favorite one was the most recent Spider-Man, not the animated one, but Far From Home. That was a crew. That was the first time where you always work with people and there's one person that's either a finger pointer or a thrower under the busser or...
Did you just point a finger over to the person who points fingers?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You jerk. But there's always that one person that makes it hard, or two or three. On this project, we were all in it together. Every single person on that movie, it felt like film school again, where it was just friends with friends making a film on the weekend. And as hard as it was, and like the fights that happen, that always happen with people, at the end of the day, we were still having a beer, making a joke, and it was such a good time. That crew was so good.
It's lightning in a bottle,
Oh,
right?
it was
Like
beautiful.
it's
It
a
was a
moment that
beautiful
passes, and then you'll always look back on that like, oh, that was so good.
Yeah, and we lived in that theater for 2 months. We lived in that theater. I remember there was one time there was one day I had off. Not the days I was. It put me that project put me in the hospital. But there was one day that I
Her
had
favorite
off.
one she's ever worked on, put her in a hospital.
The one day that I did have off in 2 months, I had to come into work because my toothbrush and deodorant and everything was at work because I lived at the studio.
That's ridiculous.
But yeah, I loved it, and none of us wanted to go home. That theater was our home for a long time.
Nice.
What about you?
I've got a couple. I would say one of my favorites was probably the project that's really set my career on a successful path, which was Pacific Rim. I was working at a small studio. It wasn't ILM, which did 90% of it. We had a very small part at the very beginning, but I was still probably considered a junior compositor, maybe entering intermediate, and they gave me opportunities to do senior compositor level work.
Oh, dope.
So I was building shots from scratch with kaijus and helicopters and lights flashing in the screen, and built full 2.5D, 3D cities, and it was pretty spectacular, the stuff that they were letting me do on this movie that was super high profile. I was working at the studio owned by Guillermo del Toro. All of our cast and crew got to meet Guillermo at the premiere in LA. So
I hear he's fabulous.
he's the nicest guy
Yeah.
I've ever met. Everybody that came up to him, he was like, "Hi, thank you, oh, thank you," and huge hug, looks you dead in the eyes and tells you thank you, and what's your name? And I guarantee that maybe not everybody, but he remembers a lot of the names when he looks you dead in the eye.
Yeah.
He's not saying it to be like, all
It's
right,
genuine.
I gotta find out this
Yeah.
guy's name because it'll make him feel good, and then okay, next. It's very much like whoever's in line can wait. I'm talking to this person. He's
Yeah, I hear
fantastic.
some great stories about him.
It's so cool when you're working with people, and it starts from the top, right?
Yeah.
When people are that passionate at that level, and it just trickles down, and the entire crew has this, like you said, the camaraderie, and like you're going through this very difficult time together, but at the end you emerge with this piece of art that stands the test of time, and people look to and point to and say, look at this thing, it's really cool, have you seen this thing? And you're like, damn yeah, I've seen that
Yeah.
thing, I worked on that.
I've
A
seen more
thousand times.
seen more of that thing than you care to know about.
I
Yeah, yeah.
pixel fucked that thing.
Yeah.
So what were the other ones that you worked on?
Some other stuff that stands out, Jayme and I worked on a show called Imaginary Mary, where the show itself was not written well. It was almost unwatchable, but working on it was super fun. We were putting a little CG character into basically a sitcom. It had never been done before, at least not at that scale.
Yeah.
I mean, we were doing dozens of shots every episode, and it just, again, it's one of those things where the team, we had a whole little office, and we were cramped, and if you backed up your chair, you were in somebody else's lap, and
Yeah.
every afternoon at 3 o'clock, the trains would go by and the diesel fumes would just pack that office, and we'd all get a little loop, like just horrendous conditions, but we were having an absolute blast doing this thing that I would say not a lot of people ended up seeing.
No.
Was that a mostly 2D show?
It's a live action show with one 3D character.
Oh, it was 3D.
There's a 3D animated
Oh,
Furry
character. Yeah, with fur and
Fur Dynamic? Holy shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a small little show, but we had a huge team of animators, and the lighters were basically amazing. There were 2 lighters for hundreds of shots. And
Who did you have for
Lipsky.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah, amazing, and Huria too. Huria just killed it. So yeah, those 2 on
I
it.
forgot.
and-
Like maybe we shouldn't be saying names.
no,
The internet
the
needs to
good
know
ones.
that John Lipsky is a badass lighting maestro.
Could have done the whole show himself, probably.
I think he did
Practically
for
did.
3/4
Yeah?
of it.
Oh,
Until he was like, I can't do this anymore, give me people. But so that show was fun, and then the other one that, funny enough, Jayme and I did that was just us. It was a commercial for a
Video game.
video game.
That's where I met you guys.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right when you started. And
Yeah.
we were just working crazy hours through the night.
Yeah,
We
Tom
had a,
Clancy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. She's like walking by the office and going, who are these guys having this like crazy bromance at work of like the
Oh,
best
Right.
time?
I'm
I
gonna tell
need
you
to be
a
a part
story
of
about
this.
them in a minute. Go on.
No, but it just, again, it's one of those things where that one wasn't as bad. The conditions weren't as crazy, but it was just you and I doing probably more work than we should have had to do. But a bigger team would have sort of ruined the dynamic of it. It was
No,
just, it was really cool.
It was amazing, and like being able to do the whole thing with just Geoff and I, it was basically put Geoff and I in a room and smash our heads against the keyboard, and something amazing comes out.
Yeah,
So yeah, I would do it again for sure.
yeah,
Oh,
that
it was
one was
awesome.
fun. So
It was awesome walking into that office and being like, hey guys, I know nothing about what you're doing, but I need you to do this. And you guys are so intelligent and so chill in a way that I never felt like you guys felt pressure. It was awesome walking to the office because I never felt like you guys, there's, you know, the stress of working in the industry. I never felt that from you guys, and I really liked it. That's why I was always there hanging out being like, hey boys.
Well, I can think it's kind of the secret of the industry is that like we're always under the gun. We're always under
Yeah.
a project deadline that's looming over us. But I mean, you can sweat it, or you can put your head down to the keyboard and start working. Like.
Well, there was a lot of 11th hour shit on that
Oh
on
yeah,
that
for
project.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it's with every show. Like it's very, very rare to finish a show early.
Yeah.
and that was a compacted schedule, but even still, like same things kept popping up, and oh, we need to add this now, but it really, I don't know what it was about that show except the team that was working on it, compositing just me and you, but the whole team all together. It was literally like we got to the point where we were like handing things off and just, all right, you do this, and then okay, this goes to you, and it was just
You guys worked so well
poetry in
together.
motion. It felt
Yeah,
like
it was
Totally,
So-
yeah, and it was a definitely like you say, it was a notable project in a sense that it was one of my favorite things that we've done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the project itself was, it was okay. It wasn't like the craziest, best trailer ever, but it was so fun.
Yeah, I
so
thought
fun
it
to
was
work
cool,
on.
but I play video games.
But, like, yeah, and then the funny thing is, like you said, the last minute kind of stuff. Like I've worked on projects where we did the final shots for a trailer, and then got on a plane, went to San Diego Comic-Con, and then they showed that trailer 2 days later in Hall H with 6,000 nerds, and you're in there. Part of this group, this for the first time ever, this trailer is being revealed, and everyone is losing their minds and like that was so cool. And the guy beside you's like, that was fucking awesome. Like, did you see that? What do you think? And you're like, it's so exciting to see the end users like direct result from the hard work
Yeah.
that you've done. And to me, I guess when circling back, that's why I stay in the industry, is because I love creating art, and when people have that kind of reaction to the stuff that you get to create, I don't know, it's like a high that I can't even explain.
Yeah.
I've seen it dozens of times now, but seeing your name in the credits at the end of a movie that you enjoyed is
It doesn't
really
get old.
is
It
really
does
a
not
cool
get old.
feeling.
I still take pictures of it, and
Yeah,
every
yeah.
time I text my buddy, hey, I
Every
just saw
time.
your movie, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
when my friends like will send me. They're like, "Oh, I saw your name." I'm like, "Yeah, how could you miss it? It's so long." But
There's
yeah,
8 Z's.
Yeah.
There's so many letters. But yeah, it's a really good feeling. And I thought when I was first in the industry, I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's such amateur stuff. But the longer I'm in the industry, I realize we're all just nerds.
We're
and
all just
love
kids
this.
loving
Yeah,
the same
we're all
things, yeah.
kids. It's awesome. It feels really, really good.
My first big movie was where I had a large shot count was Twilight New Moon, the vampire movie, teenager thing.
Slow clap. Oh my goodness.
My family was so supportive that when they said, "Oh, Jayme's movie's coming out," and like my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters all went to the theater with me on opening night to go see Twilight New Moon, which no one had ever seen. They didn't know like what the series was about. It's vampires or something. I don't know, right? But they knew that I was responsible for some of these sequences, and they had printed me out a shirt that on the back said, "I made this movie."
Oh, no.
Wow.
And it was embarrassing, but also incredibly like it
That's
was amazing. Yeah, and
adorable.
so like they all went and we saw the movie together, and I was like, "What do you guys think?" And they were like,
I actually have a question about this. So VFX people in
Yeah.
general, we watch movies for the VFX.
Of
So
course,
what's a
yeah.
movie that you're like you love that everybody's like that's a shitty movie and you're like the VFX are so good though and you secretly like it just because of the VFX?
Good question. Oh, jeez. I don't know. I
There
have to
was
think about
one on Netflix recently called Spectral
Mhm.
that had incredible visual effects, and everybody just killed the story. I actually kind of liked it. But I might have been biased because it looked good, but That's definitely one of them that stands out where everybody's like, not watching that again. I'm like, I thought that was great. And it really did deliver the visual effects, so.
That's cool.
I don't know, I can't really point to a movie, but there are a lot of bad movies that I like because of the visual effects.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what
I think that's
know.
particularly what she asked.
That's exactly
Almost
what I
exactly.
It's just
You
like,
never
I
listen.
don't know. But I couldn't tell you all of them. I was like, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
The sequences usually, it'll be like one thing.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? It'll be like, oh, that movie was crap, but this one scene, you know?
Do you have one?
Mirror Mask.
Mirror Mask.
It's a shitty little movie. It's like a solid B movie.
Oh, yeah.
Good, awesome. And even the visual effects aren't that great. Like, they're not spectacular, but the way they did them is aesthetically pleasing in a way that I'm just like, yes, I want to do that. Like, it inspired some of my own personal projects, just the way they did. I really liked that movie, but it's such a bad movie. So I can't show anybody and be like, oh, I'm not going to tell you guys to watch it. Don't bother. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. But like, there's a lot of that movie, just the way it looks, it's very eye candy to me.
Similar question, is there something that you've worked on that you know is a bad movie, but you still like it because it has like a personal meaning to you?
Oh. Once Upon a Time.
Oh, everybody here has touched Once Upon a Time. Oh, if you're in Vancouver, if you're in Vancouver and you've worked in visual effects, there's a chance that you've worked on.
There's a very strong chance you've worked on it.
Back in my day, like I'm old as fuck. That show was Stargate, and everybody.
Or Supernatural.
So dope,
Supernatural has that
yeah,
too.
Stargate was the thing in visual effects that was happening in Vancouver, and that it was very, that was the thing. If you had Stargate on your reel, that meant that you'd done visual effects.
You
in
live in
Vancouver.
visual effects, or live in
And
Vancouver.
I have a Stargate shot that I did, and it was super cool. It was like that validation of your career, like I made it. You know what I mean? I did a Stargate. So yeah, that's probably one that kind of sticks out.
I did one that I think most people don't even know it exists, but there's a Harold and Kumar 3, which was a Christmas movie,
Yeah.
and it was in stereo 3D, and
Why?
I stand by it. The movie is phenomenal. The comedy is good. The story is really cute and fun, and there's people you wouldn't expect to see in it, but nobody has seen it. And even when people do see it, they tell me it's bad, and I can't see it. I think because it holds such a special place for me. It's one of those first movies I did. I think it was 2011 that it came out, 2010 maybe. But I don't know. I can probably admit now that it's bad, but I'll never see it that way.
By that explanation, I would say it's Ninja Turtles 2 then for me.
Oh, okay.
Because like
That's definitely in the
that
vein of
was-
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That nobody else respects.
Shut up! It was really good, guys. It was like my first lead as an artist. It was my first lead project, and it was Ninja Turtles. I'm a stupid huge fan of, so it was one of those that I had a connection with going in, and didn't care if it's shit. And when it came out, I was just like, I did this. This was me.
This is funny for me because she said Ninja Turtles 2, and I'm like, oh, Secret of the Ooze, because I'm old as fuck.
Of course, I'm
No.
right there
And
with you.
then she's like, I'm trying to think. I'm like, what were the visual effects in that movie that she's talking about? And she's, of
How
course,
did she do
she's
that?
talking about the new Teenage Mutant
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles.
The
I'm
one
like,
that
oh,
doesn't-
God, I'm
Oh
old.
my God.
Secret of the Ooze is better than the movie that I made.
Oh, and Secret of the Ooze is so bad.
I know.
Go Ninja, go
Yeah.
Ninja,
That's the
go.
best part of it.
You gotta be
Yeah,
real
yeah.
careful with that statement, because that's comments just blew up.
Yeah. Good times.
Whatever. It's,
I mean, is that it? Like, can you even go further than Vanilla Ice in a topic discussion?
I think Vanilla Ice
That's-
wraps
that's
up
the-
every
that's
topic.
it, right?
But I think that's a really good stopping point, and I think camera's still rolling. That's a good sign.
Yay!
Microphones are still on. That's a good
Are they?
sign. Holy crap! We're
I muted myself right at the beginning.
oh, perfect.
Okay, good.
I'm hoping that this is no technical difficulties,
Mike,
and
did you
we're
break it? Is it blinking?
and we're out. So
Yeah.
I think that wraps the first episode.
Thanks
Thank you,
for having
Jayme,
us.
Dizzy,
Yay!
everybody else,
Thanks,
and
everybody.
We did it!
we'll be back hopefully with more.
I want more.
Yeah. Oh, end on a creepy thing.
On that note, I saw Vanilla Ice in concert like 3 weeks ago.
In concert? No shit.
He came back.
Yeah.